Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be configuring security for the Elasticsearch cluster. As you know, you have to secure communications between the nodes of an Elasticsearch cluster and any data communication to and from the cluster. I'm going to show you here on my whiteboard the setup that I have here at home. I have an Elasticsearch cluster with 3 nodes, and I have a Kibana instance looking at the data in the Elasticsearch cluster, and I'm sending my firewall logs to an ingestion server running filebeat. It does the parsing and the filtering and then indexes into the cluster. And if I zoom into the cluster here now, we need to secure communication between the nodes, something Elasticsearch calls the transport module, which is securing the communication between the nodes with certificates on port 9300. So we're creating SSL certificates or TLS between the nodes, and then also creating certificates between any clients and the cluster. So for example, Kibana and the cluster. This communication right here, in Elasticsearch terms, it's called the HTTP module. So it is communicating on port 9200 TCP, and those ones here are communicating on port 9300. This is the transport module, but technically they're both SSL or TLS. So I have this is the Kibana interface here, the monitoring interface. I have 3 nodes. They're running on version 8.4.3. I think it's the latest so far. And I will be securing the communications to and from the cluster and between the nodes. So I have node number 1 right here. I'm going to be using the documentation here and setting up the basic security for the Elastic Stack. So I'm going to start here under manually configure security. They talk about the Elastic security layers. Minimal security is just security between the Elasticsearch node and Kibana, and I did that on the video that I made when I set up Elasticsearch and Kibana. I will link it in the description. And then a step further, or another layer, is when you set up basic security, you set up the certificates between the nodes and between Kibana and the cluster. And then you can also enable the TLS or the certificate authentication from the beats as well, file beat, winlog beat, packet beat, whatever you are using. So I will start with basic security because I have minimal security enabled. So with the basic security, here they're talking about the transport layer security and the HTTP layer security, but they're both basically TLS or SSL. We will be generating a certificate authority. It is recommended to use an internal trusted CA, but right here in a lab environment, I'm just going to create one, and I'm going to be using the cert util in Elasticsearch. So on node number 1 here, I'm just going to navigate to the installation directory of Elasticsearch, and I have all these tools here, and I'm going to be using Elasticsearch-cert util, and when I put CA in the CA mode, it will generate a CA for me. So this tool assists you with the generation of X509 certificates. The CA mode generates a new certificate authority. And at the end here, please enter the desired output file, Elasticstack CA P12. I'm going to press enter. Enter password. It is recommended to enter a password. All right, after that, we will create on any single node, generate a certificate and a private key for the nodes in your cluster. We're going to also use this Elasticsearch cert util with the cert mode and pass in that CA so that those certs are signed by the CA. Okay, on the same node, I'm gonna run that. And this CA cert is in this location, is in the installation directory of Elasticsearch. Now enter the password for the CA. Please enter the desired output file. So these are the certificates. I'm just going to accept. Enter a password for the Elastic certificate. And now I have a certificate created for my nodes. And now we have to encrypt internode communications with TLS, which means you go to the Elasticsearch YAML file, the configuration for Elasticsearch, on each node, and you put these configurations. So cluster name has to be the same on all nodes, specify the node name, and you specify these settings. Now these settings are there already, we just have to change the certificate. So I'm going to be moving the certificate from here to the configuration directory of Elasticsearch, and there is a directory inside of it called certs. I'm going to move it there, and I'm going to change to that directory, ls-l, and this is the certificate I moved right here. I'm just going to give it the same permissions as the other ones, or as the ones created by default. So I'll give the Elasticsearch group access, and I'll give also the Elasticsearch group read-write permissions. So ls-l, right? And now I'm going to the YAML file. I can just and these are the certificates we are working with. I'm going to be replacing the transport because I'm encrypting the internode communication. So instead of here transport, I'm going to copy paste this file. This file is in the same location as the other ones, so I just have to change the name. I'm going to save this file, and now it is telling me, because I entered a password on creating the node certificate, run the following commands to store the password in the Elasticsearch key store. So I'm going to the installation directory again and run this command to add this password in the key store. So I'm just going to copy this. Overwrite, yes. We're overwriting because there was a default one, and the other command as well. And this is under this directory, the installation directory. Overwrite and enter the password. Okay, complete the previous step for each node in your cluster. So I'm going to be copying the certificate. I'm going to be copying this certificate to the other nodes and doing the same thing, editing the nano or editing the Elasticsearch YAML file and adding those passwords on the other nodes. This will not show any difference here on Kibana, but now we have secure communications with the newly created certificate between our Elasticsearch nodes. Now the next step is to set up basic security for the Elastic Stack plus secured HTTPS traffic. So now we're going to be securing traffic HTTP client communications for Elasticsearch. So for example, Kibana connects to Elasticsearch on port 9200. We need that to be secure communications, and we need to secure that with a certificate as well. So on every node in your cluster, stop Elasticsearch and Kibana if they are running. So now we have to stop the service. On any single node from a directory where you installed Elasticsearch, run the Elasticsearch HTTP certificate tool to generate a certificate signing request. Now we will be using the certutil in HTTP mode. Okay, we are here in the installation directory. I'm going to be using the Elasticsearch certutil again to generate a certificate for every node, for every single Elasticsearch node and for Kibana. So for that, I'm going to be using the certutil in HTTP mode, just like here in the documentation. Okay, generate a CSR, I'm gonna say no. Use an existing CA, I'm gonna say yes. And the CA path is USR share Elasticsearch, and the CA was called Elastic Stack CA.p12. Password for the CA. I'm going to say 3 years. Generate a certificate per node. I'm going to say yes. Node 1 name. I'm going to enter the first node name. And now it's asking enter all the host names that you need, one per line. I'm just going to say enter and enter again. I'm going to say yes, this is correct. Enter all the IP addresses. And this is the IP address of node 1. Enter again, say yes. Do you wish to change any of these options? No. Add additional certificates? Yes. Now it says after generating a certificate for each node of your cluster, for each of our nodes, enter a password for your private key when prompted. I'm just at the end here. Enter additional certificates. No, because I generated for the 3 nodes. Provide a password for the http.p12 file. Password to confirm. What file name should be used to the output as the output? I'm just gonna keep it as the default one. I press enter, and it says zip file written to this location, and it's called Elastic SSL HTTP, and it's a zip file. Unzip this file, archive. Okay, so we unzip this file, the Elasticsearch SSL HTTP zip, and we get 2 directories, Elasticsearch and Kibana. And inside Elasticsearch, we have a certificate for each node. I can check that. you have an HTTP P12 certificate for each node and a sample Elasticsearch YAML file on how to set it up. So now on every node in your cluster, complete the following steps. We'll go to the Elasticsearch YAML and specify that certificate in for the HTTP SSL key store path right here, and add the password for the private key to the secure settings in Elasticsearch. Okay, so I'm going to go to I'm going to do something first. The one called HTTP.P12. The default one is also called HTTP P12, so I'm gonna rename it to just .old or something. Now I'm gonna copy the Elasticsearch one. To that configuration directory. I'm gonna make sure this new one has the same permissions as the other ones. Okay, now the new one has the same permissions as the other ones. I'm gonna go to, oh, I was already there, elasticsearch.yaml. And under the XPack security HTTP SSL, it is enabled, and I don't need to do anything because it's the same name, but just make sure the old one is renamed and the new one is in the same location. And XPack security enabled true, just like in here. And all I have to do now is to add this password. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to use the Elasticsearch key store utility to add the password. Overwrite the default one. Okay, and I'm going to do the same for the other nodes as well. Why did I forget? No, 2 and 3, I forgot about this. So I forgot that to add the password for the private key on nodes 2 and 3. So I'm going to add that and start Elasticsearch. So now what's left is to encrypt HTTP client communications for Kibana. The cert util with the HTTP option right here, it created these two directories, one for Elasticsearch nodes and one for Kibana. If we look inside the Kibana directory here, we have this PEM file, this certificate. We will use it in the Kibana configurations to trust the Elasticsearch CA for the HTTP layer. So I'm going to be copying this over to the Kibana machine. So this is the IP address of the Kibana instance, 120, and I will move it to this directory, the configuration directory of Kibana. Okay, I'm going to bring the Kibana machine over here. And we just move this file here, and I'm going to give it read-write access. So change mod 660 Kibana Elasticsearch-CA PEM, and I'm going to specify that in the configuration file in Kibana. So kibana.yaml. So Elasticsearch SSL certificate authorities, that's under the Kibana YAML file, instead of that one we used before, the default one. I'm going to be using this new one. Okay, so under Elasticsearch SSL certificate authorities. And now the Elasticsearch hosts as well, and under the output section, and that would be right, Elasticsearch hosts. We already have it HTTPS, so because we were using the default certificate, but if you haven't specified HTTPS before and you added this certificate, you have to specify the S right here to connect securely to the cluster, to the Elasticsearch nodes over the HTTP port. And now I'm going to save this file. I'm going to say before I start the Kibana service, because we still have more changes, we have to now encrypt the traffic between Kibana and the browser. Okay, so we did that. Now we need to encrypt the traffic between the browser and Kibana. So here in Kibana, because we connect HTTP, it's not secure. We have to use a certificate. We have to generate a certificate for the Kibana server so that we can access Kibana with HTTPS. So we have to create this server certificate and key for Kibana so that when browser is making connection to Kibana, it uses the certificate and key. So we have to generate, for that, we have to generate a certificate signing request. So the CA uses the information in the certificate signing request to generate and sign a security certificate. The certificate can be trusted, so like signed by a public CA or a trusted CA. This is a public one that's encrypted, or your organization's internal CA. You can use that to sign a certificate for Kibana. In our case, I generated our own CA, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to be using the cert util again in the Elasticsearch. I'm going to go here, Elasticsearch-cert util. And for that, I'm going to specify CSR. I'm going to say -name Kibana server. And I'm going to press enter. The CSR mode produces a single zip file which contains the certificate signing request and private keys for each instance. So now we have this zip file generated. We will unzip it to get our CSR. All right. Kibana server, ls-l, and we have a CSR certificate signing request. We're going to be using it. Our CI will use this CSR to sign our new certificate for Kibana. And to do that, I'm going to be using this utility also. Let's search cert util. I'm going to create a cert in PEM format, so --PEM, and we're going to specify the CA, which is in this location USR share Elasticsearch and elastic-stack CA, and the name is Kibana server. Enter the password for the CA. Please enter the desired output file, certificate bundle. Just gonna press enter. And now we have this also zip file, the certificate bundle. We will unzip that file. I'm gonna say yes. So inflating Kibana server is under Kibana server. We have Kibana server key. And now we have a CSR, a CRT, a certificate file. And we can use that to secure communications from the browser to Kibana. And the way to do that is, first of all, I need to copy this to Kibana to edit the Kibana YAML file. So I'm gonna move the CRT file, certificate, or securely copy it to the Kibana instance. I'm gonna put it in the configuration directory. I'm going to bring the Kibana machine here, go to the Kibana YAML file, and under this Kibana server configuration, enable SSL and paths to the PEM format SSL certificate. Right here, I'm going to uncomment this, and this. Kibana server.crt, Kibana server key. Oh, I have to move the key as well. Okay, so we specify them in the Kibana YAML file. So we moved those two files. I'm gonna save this file and double check the permissions. CRT, read write, and the key. I'm going to give the key also as well a read write. Kibana-server.key. I think it will work with read only, but I don't want to risk it. I'm just going to give it read write as well. Kibana server CRT. Okay, and now I have the certificate and the key. They're both in the Kibana YAML file, and now I can start the Kibana service. Status Kibana. This is active and running. Let's see if we have any errors. I can see the memory climbing here. So far so good. Info. So no errors. I'm going to be accessing now Kibana with HTTPS. And because it's not a trusted certificate, it's not signed by a public or a trusted CA. I'm just going to accept that warning. And now we have a secure communication from the browser to Kibana, from Kibana to Elasticsearch, and between the Elasticsearch nodes, from and to every node to each other. And this is everything for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.